This is a clip of Pete Hegseth. I think this clip is actually really remarkable. It really gets at something about not just the American mentality, but the whole like Western white supremacist colonialist mentality. Being hypocritical is one thing, but there's a whole other side. Let's watch the clip and then we can talk about it more.
To that point on capabilities, Iran's an energy-rich country, could be, should be. Instead, like so many other places driven by a radical ideology, they've spent that money instead of investing in their people. That's why you had millions of Iranians protesting, because they felt like their quality of life didn't match what it could be or should be. And what was the Iranian state? There's a reason we call Iran the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, because they took the money they make and they invest it in tunnels, and they invested in missiles, and they invested in launchers and UAVs, and we are destroying and degrading that in historic proportions. But it doesn't mean they won't still have some and try to hold people at issue, which is why we're fighting every single day to continue to compel. And you mentioned embassies and consulates. Unlike previous administrations, we are doubling and tripling down on ensuring that our people, regardless of their Department of War, Department of State, whatever they do, are secure in those facilities. And the best defense is a good offense. And so we're not afraid to go after and kill anybody, and we have a lot of them attempting to target our diplomatic facilities. Iran, we're not surprised that they would indiscriminately target, and we're still seeing that.
Indiscriminately. God, so there's a couple things about that clip, right? Number one, this whole idea, like they're spending money on military instead of spending money on their people. Can you believe that? Coming from the fucking United States of America. Like the hypocrisy is just like one element of that. The fact that like it's insane for an American to be like, they're spending money on the military. So it's not just that it's hypocritical though. Because there's also this whole element of like, that's why people were protesting, because like they're not being taken care of because the state's spending all this money on military. Talking about a country that they're sanctioning, that they've been sanctioning for years. This country that negotiated the JPOA to get out from under crippling American sanctions. And then Trump comes in and reinstates all the sanctions and throws the deal in the garbage. And refusing to make this connection that American sanctions have had something to do with the economic problems that Iran has had. And just saying it's exclusively a thing of like, oh, it's an energy-rich country and they're taking their resources and wealth and spending it on the military. Not talking about their own role in creating these exact economic conditions. We're seeing echoes of this in Cuba right now as well. Cuba, what America is doing in Cuba right now, like we're focusing on Iran and Lebanon and Gaza still, obviously for good reason. What America is doing in Cuba right now is absolutely depraved and sick, and is just as much of a horrifying crime as anything that America has ever done or is currently doing right now. But they do the same thing. Oh, Cuba's in all these economic problems because of communism. Because of communism, Cuba has all these issues. Look at the paint peeling off the walls of these buildings. Look at the crumbling infrastructure. Look, they're having blackouts. Look, it's because of communism this is happening. And not talking about the fact that they've deliberately created these conditions for 70 plus years. Because, as we talked about before, the brave and heroic Cuban people overthrew a brutal US-backed dictator. And they can't let that slide. No matter how many years go by, no matter how many decades or generations go by, they can't let it slide. So they deliberately inflict these economic conditions on Cuba. They're currently like escalating that. They're not allowing any oil in. Cuba's entire energy grid is failing. There's thousands of people that rely on like medical care, people that are hooked up to dialysis machines, really almost dying right now, and probably thousands will die if nothing happens. To say nothing of like people not being able to eat, not being able to like preserve food. This is being inflicted deliberately by the absolutely sadistic, sick Epstein class of the United States on the heroic people of Cuba right at this very moment. And at the same time, they say, well, look at what communism has done to this place. So it's an echo of what we just saw from Pete Hegseth when he talks about Iran and the economic problems and the protests that were happening, while completely obscuring or denying America's role in creating these economic conditions. And this is another thing too, where they talk about how it's like a sign of delusion that Iran invested in the military. And you can point to, DPRK about this as well. Can you believe DPRK spends all these limited resources they have on military? Yes, I can believe that. Yes, I can, because they were victims of a horrifying genocidal mass murder campaign in their country that killed 2 million people. That's the foundation of their country. And they've been sanctioned and blockaded and deliberately starved for years afterwards. And they've got the most powerful military in the world that committed this horrifying crime, parked directly on the fake border that was instituted by this nation with missiles pointed at the country for the last 70 years, doing military exercises with the fascist puppet state that they installed in the South every single year, where they plan an invasion of this country. You're telling me they spend money on the military? Wow, what an irrational, delusional, paranoid place. Why is that? Why are they doing that? It's just this refusal to investigate, or like Pete Hegseth, he doesn't need to investigate, but a refusal to acknowledge the fact that America creates these conditions for these places, and then they hold up these countries as examples of like how irrational and delusional these places are. Or Iran, exactly. Iran spends all these monies on missiles and drones. Can you believe that? Well, it turns out that was totally necessary. What would be happening in Iran right now if they hadn't devoted resources to building missiles and building drones and building up their military? What would be happening in Iran right now? It turns out that was completely necessary. And they're sitting there saying like they're spending money on missiles instead of helping people. No shit, they're spending money on missiles. Because when the great Satan comes knocking at their door and starts bombing their capital city along with their sadistic psycho allies in Israel, they need to be able to respond to that. It turns out there's a very good reason why they've been spending money on military and missiles and drones. You see the same, like, again, you see time and time again, any country, any nation, any people that's targeted by these imperialist countries gets talked about the same way. It was the same with Maduro. Even after Maduro was abducted, there was all this stuff being like, this man, he's been living in this like paranoid, delusional bubble where he's constantly afraid of foreign interference and he's constantly warning about foreign interference. It turns out it actually was not delusional. It turns out that's a totally rational thing to be thinking about when you're a country that's being targeted in this way. And then this man gets abducted and they want to say like he's being delusional and irrational by being paranoid by the country that kidnapped him or abducted him. It's insane. And it's like so sadistic the way America inflicts these exact conditions on different people around the world. Any country that defies them, any country, if you want to overthrow the US-backed dictator, if you want to nationalize your resources, they get targeted in this way. They get targeted by economic sanctions, blockades, propaganda, assassinations. And then the same country that's doing all that wants to point their finger at these countries and being like, look at them, they're spending money on military. They're paranoid. They're just anti-American for no reason. It's fucking crazy. And it's like abuser logic. It's colonizer logic. But it's just, again, it's inflicting these exact conditions on countries and then criticizing these exact countries for experiencing these conditions and for taking steps to defend themselves, which it turns out are completely necessary. It's crazy. And we don't even need to talk about the hypocritical aspect. When America, of all places, says like you're spending money on defense instead of your people, $1 trillion annual military budget of America, they're asking for $200 billion more. What is it? This war already in a couple of weeks has cost like $11 billion or something like that. And they're still going to sit there and say, oh, I can't believe Iran, they spend all their money on the military. It's just insane, man. It really is. Yeah, the Pentagon's asking for 200 extra billion. And look, we got to keep bombing this country because of their backwards religious beliefs. This backwards country of religious fanatics.
And I say the same to every American who wants peace through strength. May Almighty God continue to bless our troops in this fight. And again, to the American people, please pray for them every day on bended knee with your family, in your schools, in your churches, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I say this.
It's fucking creepy, man. Pete, I'm going to pray that Iran wins the war. How about that? My prayers are canceling out yours. I think we should all commit, Chad, to pray that the great Satan is defeated in this war. And together we can cancel out a lot of these prayers that are coming from Pete Hegseth in the White House. Any word from Satanyahu? I mean, I've only seen that clip of him and Huckabee and all these like weird POV AI videos he keeps putting out. The one of him and Huckabee, again, we watched it on the stream, but I think it's worth like thinking again about how sick it is. And again, how it's like every accusation is a confession. You know, it's what it always comes down to. And the idea that Netanyahu, this wanted war criminal responsible for horrifying crimes against humanity, is putting out these like smirking POV videos where he's holding like a kill list in his hand and he's talking with the U.S. ambassador about this kill list and all the people that are on this list that he intends to kill. How fucking cartoonish is that? That's like the most cartoonish supervillain thing. And if any other country did that, if Vladimir Putin or Khamenei or someone from Hezbollah or Ansarullah or Hamas or Kim Jong-un or President Xi or fucking anybody was doing that, putting out videos being like, here's my kill list. I wouldn't want you to be on that list because everyone here is going to die. The idea that that wouldn't be like everyone around the world wouldn't say, look, what the fuck? It's so depraved. Like, it's honestly sickening. It really is sickening. And it's just, this is all just like completely normalized. And people that are on this kill list, people like Larijani, who they just killed the other day, who many believe was one of the only people in Iran that could have possibly contributed to an actual peaceful outcome to this. And Israel's just like systematically taking out anyone that might play that kind of a role. This is one of the guys that was on the kill list that Netanyahu was just waving around in one of these videos and joking around about. Here you have The Guardian, not exactly a bastion of anti-imperialist analysis, The Guardian, who openly describe this plan of Israel killing Iranian leaders to derail any U.S. pathway to a ceasefire. This is from The Guardian. Again, the significance of Larijani's removal also lies in the confirmation that Israel and possibly the U.S. never regarded him as an alternative leader for Iran in the event of the government breaking up or in effect surrendering. Eli Geranmayeh, an Iran expert at the European Council on Foreign Relations, said, Netanyahu is now focused on blocking Trump's pathways for a ceasefire and follow-up talks with Iran. Larijani would have been the man to get that job done. So it's like this open knowledge in the West that Netanyahu is just like systematically killing anybody, just as they were during the negotiations with Hamas, systematically killing anybody that might play a role in stopping this from continuing or escalating. And whether you want to believe these ideas or not, this absolutely contributes to this idea that it's not Trump, but it's Netanyahu and Israel that's pulling the strings in this conflict. Almost all of them died in their home, office, or their children's home, etc. They're not really hiding in bunkers. Larijani was just out a couple weeks ago when the war started, like marching with people in the street openly. And he studied Western philosophy. He wasn't as anti-West as most IRGC folks. Yeah, and like they're creating the exact situation where even more radical anti-American and anti-Israel leadership are going to come in. And similar to what I was talking about, they're eliminating anybody. They take out Khamenei, they take out all of these IRGC leaders, they take out Larijani. And then eventually, when these people are replaced by way more hardliners and people that hate America even more and Israel even more, they're going to say, look at them. They hate Israel. They hate America. They hate our values. They're just ontologically evil. They're just ontologically evil and hateful.